Hi, this is Pete Heiniger, and I'm here for part two of kind of my journey through radiation. And so the first session was a little bit long, and so I want to make sure that we kind of get to the point quicker on this session. But the first session was just basically discussing kind of the mental state that you're in when you get a diagnosis like cancer and then you don't know anything about radiation, and so you're stuck with trying to sort that out, and you have a lot of preconceived ideas, you've got a lot of things that you're thinking, and so it's a mental health thing. And so those things are important to kind of talk about, because there's a lot about radiation that has changed probably from when some of us remember someone going through it. And so it's always good to kind of understand that. And so I learned a lot through that process. Today's session is going to be specific to just deciding the timing. And remember, I just always want to give the disclaimer that everybody's cancer journey is different. The oncology team may approach your cancer just a little bit different than they approach mine, due to a lot of variables and a lot of circumstances that I don't need to go into, because there's just a ton of them. So this is just my journey, but I think you'll find a lot of similarity in what you might be going through, have gone through, or are potentially going to go through. All right, so let's get started. The thing I want to talk about now is just timing, because there's a lot of consideration that goes into the timing of radiation that I didn't actually realize. So for me, when I started stage 4, diagnosis with colorectal cancer, and they were starting to look at everything, one of the key things is they wanted to get the cells, the cancer cells that were being carried in my blood. They wanted to get them out and dealt with as fast as possible. And so chemotherapy was the best way to do that. So we went into like a pretty intensive rounds of chemotherapy, and I was doing that every other week. So every other Wednesday I would go in and have what's called infusion. And so that was the primary concern, and that was because I was stage 4, so my cancer had already moved from the primary source, which was in my colon, to then moving to my liver, and I had several lesions on my liver. So cancer lesions are just like small cancer tumors that are on my liver. And so we didn't want it to spread to lungs, we didn't want it to spread anywhere else in the body. And so your main concern is to kind of deal with the cancer that is in the blood, and then try to shrink the cancer, the other cancers, through chemotherapy. So that's our primary goal. So that's what we did. Radiation was something that we had talked about, we considered, but we just weren't ready to pull the trigger. And the real big reason for that is timing is everything if you have stage 4. So to do radiation, you have to be off of some of the drugs from chemotherapy for about 2 weeks before you can even do radiation. And then you need for me, I was going to do radiation for 1 week. So there's 3 weeks already, right? And then I'm supposed to recover for 2 more weeks after radiation is over. So now, right, we're 3, 4, 5 weeks that you're not going to be having chemotherapy. And so that can be risky in some circumstances. For me, it was a risky thought to say, okay, we're just going to discontinue chemotherapy for 5 weeks, right? And so the concern there is that while you're trying to do this radiation to one particular location where there's one tumor, the cancer's still in your blood and it's spreading. And so then it could take hold, and you could start to have cancer growing in other parts of your body, or more in your liver, or wherever. And so that's a big concern. And so those are the things that you have to kind of try to think through when you think through timing. Of course, that's the beauty of having a great oncology team and working with your team. You kind of weigh all of those things. And so we had several meetings, we discussed it. For me, it was kind of, the choice was made easy for me, because I ended up getting COVID. And so I had COVID, kind of the Delta variant. And so that meant I had to discontinue chemotherapy anyway. So what we did is say, okay, I'm out because of COVID, so let me get through that and recover. But then let's go ahead and do, once I'm fully done and I don't, I'm past COVID, then let's start going through the process of radiation because I'm already off. So let's just go ahead and pull the trigger. So that's what determined timing for us. But that still came at consulting and working and talking with my oncology team and cancer team. And so that's a really important thing, to discuss. And you'll do that with almost everything, right? Like you can do that with, I have lesions on my liver, and the idea is like, well, when would be a good time maybe to go in and have surgery and have those removed? Mine happened to be that I have not tons, but I have about 7 lesions on my liver, but they're all throughout my liver in different layers and different lobes. And so the surgeons are a little bit reluctant to just slice up my liver like confetti. And so we've been putting that off, especially since we've watched, and the tumors that are in my liver have been very responsive to chemotherapy. So they've been continuing to shrink. So as long as that progresses and they continue to shrink, we might be able to eliminate a few of those and then maybe only deal with 1 or 2 of the bigger ones. And then surgery would make more sense. So like with everything, you're always consulting with your team, your options, and then you kind of have to work with them to decide when to pull the trigger. So that's really it, the long and the short of it. I think that as you're working through, I think the other thing that you're consulting with the team, and now that your radiologist is a part of that team, your radiologist is just going to kind of walk you through kind of what is the process going to be like, right? And what is your recovery? What are the side effects? What are those things? Because you've got to consider, like, do I feel up to it, right? I mean, for me, the question was coming off of COVID and then having recovered from that, is that, am I going to feel okay? But I felt fine. Like, I felt strong. COVID kind of sucked to go through, but it wasn't like a lot of people had when they had COVID. And so I was fortunate that it kind of passed through and it was a lot easier for me. And some of that's because I had access to the antibody treatment and stuff like that because of my stage 4 diagnosis. So that's it. So I want to say, like, last time we talked a little bit about just your mental thoughts going in, because you don't know as much as you probably should know about radiation and the side effects, and then how much technology has advanced. So we kind of discussed that last time. This time we discussed just, when to pull that trigger, and so the timing of everything. Next, the next section of this kind of journey is the process itself. And I hope you're excited to hear that, because I can't wait to share with you kind of what I was able to learn as I went through the actual process. So actually having radiation and whatnot. And then once we tell you about that, then I'm going to close with just being really real and raw with the symptoms, the pain, the side effects, so that you hear a straight dope. Because the one thing I don't ever want to do on here is just kind of like make it feel like sunbeams and rainbows, because that's not the case, right? I wouldn't wish radiation or chemotherapy on the worst enemy that I had. They're not pleasant to go through, but for me, they ended up being doable, right? They ended up being something that I could get through, and they were not as big as my mind was making it out to be. Okay, so hey, I love you, and I'll talk to you soon.